perhaps as we put together this framework that would enable the growth of the market within Europe, one important thing that has to be done is clarifying roles and responsibilities, which is a very sensitive and critical element. As of now, there's no clarity where public ends, where private starts. And so we have to provide an enabling environment whereby even if that definition is not possible to start with, but we provide an enabling environment where discussion can take place and people can address those things in an open and transparent manner. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Felipe. So a lot of ideas, a lot of already planned actions, I will say, but also a lot of challenges in the implementation. So we have still, well, let's say 15 minutes maximum. So I think it's time to get your views and also your comments and or questions you may have for any of our panelists of what you heard the last 40 minutes or so. So the floor is open for those who, we can start from this side. I see the lady over there. Yeah, please.
Jane Dennett-Thorpe from Department of Energy and Climate Change at the UK. Although I've worked on climate change for some years, I'm relatively new to this field. I'm very impressed by the wealth of expertise around the room and the work that's gone into getting us here today. However, I just wanted to reflect on my experiences, which was that climate services is a pretty abstract concept. It took me some time to get to grips with it, and I've had some challenges in getting it across to other people as well. And we've heard a lot today about focusing on user needs and the need for translation. And I thought in that context, we also need to be clear about expressing what it is we're talking about. And what I've heard today, I think, is that we're talking about adapting to climate change. And I think it would be very helpful if we kept foregrounding that. And I heard Danielle's comments about his adaptation services. So it was very welcome to hear that kind of focus on adaptation. And I wondered if the panel, so that was a general comment, and I wondered if the panel might also reflect on if they see differences between climate services and adaptation services, what they think the differences are. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
We may take one more. I think there was another gentleman, I think. Yes, so we take this one and then we ask the panel to
Hello.
come.
Thank you. My name is Rolf Kuhlmann from DLR Germany. I would like to take up a point from the panel from Daniel Zimmer and take it back to the Commission maybe. I think it was quite an interesting insight into the impact modeling part that you mentioned in the agricultural sector in particular. So I have the feeling that in fact the previous panel was mainly talking about the standard climate science and mentioning rightfully all the uncertainties in this sector, but in fact there is a layer missing, which is this impact layer. The climate data need to be translated into impact on society, on natural systems first maybe. So agriculture is one sector. And I'm just coming from a conference where this impact research community was gathered, and in fact, in some indications, they found that the uncertainty from this impact modeling part is in fact larger than from the climate modeling. Now you can maybe go into the details how that was found out, but I think the message is there is a clear link which does need to be taken up and reinforced. And my question to the Commission is where do you see this strand of research in your actions under the climate science part? Is impact research now labeled part of the climate service research domain, or how is that going to continue?
Thank you very much. So I open the floor to anybody who, I mean, there were two questions basically. The first one, if there is a real difference or if we see a real difference between climate services and adaptation services. And then the second one on the impact type of research and modeling. And so
I may start, and I guess that we definitely talk of climate services and not of adaptation services in our intention, because we don't think that the climate services should be restricted to the adaptation domain. This has been discussed this morning by several speakers, and in our view, the climate services is how to use climate intelligence for improving decision-making processes at all levels. Decision-making that can be of the public administration as well of a business area. Can be of an association, can be of a private citizen, whatever. And we think that the decisions to be taken are both in the area of mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation is not only not restricted to public authorities who have to decide on policies, but it is definitely very much the field of a lot of companies, because there are companies which are, for instance, under the ETS domain, they have to take decisions on mitigation as well. And there are companies who want to take decisions on mitigation in order, as Paul told us this morning, they want to position themselves in the future, and they want to anticipate as well the future. As far as the impact modeling is concerned, the question, it's a little bit tricky in the sense that in view of the orientation, the new orientation of Horizon 2020, challenge-based approach and not subject-based, let's call it, or thematic approach. We have reoriented our way of designing research activities. And for this reason, we have decided to take a strategic approach towards the development of climate services. And in our view, the promotion of research activities in the field of climate services in various sectors will develop the necessary impact modeling or impact evaluation science that is needed for the user's needs. So it's a user-driven approach that will define the agenda for developing impact assessments, basically.
I won't comment on the, when I presented research for climate services, it's really climate services at large. So it's climate services to be more resilient to short-term events, or to be better adapted in the medium term, or to mitigate in the long term. So it's that cover for all these issues. And now on the impact, I would say that the AeroNet for climate services that we are preparing will put particular emphasis on the impact modeling, but not only on climate impact, but also on socioeconomic impacts. There are many other global change and climate that happen in the world that people at local, regional scale have to deal with. And it's really important that with that climate impact, it's another impact on the usual impact, socioeconomic impact, the financial crisis and all these things. So how the synergies between these different impacts happen and how the society transforms. So it's not to look at the climate in an isolated manner.
Maybe a quick comment also on my side. I would agree with Andrea. We have called our platform Adaptation Services because we wanted to be very clear that we are working on adaptation in that platform. But we have other activities on greenhouse gas MRV, which are obviously then using a climate service approach as well, but devoted then to mitigation. There are also areas like cities, for instance, where the distinction between mitigation and adaptation is not as clear as it is. When I arrived in Climate Kick, I was surprised talking to cities that adaptation and mitigation was just mixed in one word, which was adaptation. So it's but in fact, in cities very often it's both. Second aspect related to the impact, everything is not necessarily research. There are also a number of observations that needs to be made to understand things that are not necessarily research. So I just, if we want to progress, of course, we need to engage with the users and understand what they need, and it's not necessarily a research program that is needed for this.
Okay. Any more questions? We have time for one or two quick questions if they are in the audience. The very back of the room. Please.
Thank you. Eivind Hoff-Ellemeyer from the Research Council of Norway. Just a clarification question to Mr. Tilche. You mentioned that mitigation was a part of this, and you referred to the ETS. And as far as I understood discussions this morning, the mitigation aspect is mainly about MRV. Are you saying that there is a need, a demand for better MRV for ETS installations?
No, I just wanted to say that we can call it mitigation services if you want, like, but there is a I don't want to use this word because it's maybe misleading, in the sense that business areas have need of different kind of support in order to deal with several requirements that are that are required by climate policy and by the market development. We have heard this morning Enel presenting their activities and their plans where and they are definitely one company which works in an ETS sector. They have to deal with that in the sense that they have to restructure so they have to work on their carbon footprint in order to manage their quota and so on. On one side, they have to work on other drivers which are more of the adaptation kind, like water stress or whatever. So it's a complexity of matters. I would not like to define those separated. As Daniel said, many cities have objectives which are as well objectives of mitigation objectives to deal with. And so we have to comply with this variety of needs, and this has to be offered to the market.